Coming in at number 10. How ambitious were our ancestors when it came to hunting game? Apparently very, according to paleontologists who unearthed over 200 ancient mammoth skeletons beneath an airport construction site in Mexico City. Now we know humanity has been responsible for more than one extinction already, so it's not off the table with the skeletal find. The reason as to why so many bones have been found in the same place remains to be seen, however. But scientists propose two potential explanations. One, they went there of their own accord to graze the grass and have some lunch. Or they were chased into the mud because humans were hungry. Which one do you think is more likely? But going by the way I feel when I'm hungry, I'm definitely going with the latter. But still, who knows? Coming in at number 9, the discovery of Atlantis. Maybe? We all know the legend of Atlantis and have all dreamed about finding a lost city while snorkeling in the ocean or in our pools at home, or maybe that's just me, but scientists think that they may have found the origin of the famous legend. A group of islands in Santorini, Greece that roughly cover 120 miles could be all that's left of what was Atlantis. Plato said that the city was drowned by a massive wave, and researchers believe that it was indeed a tsunami that was triggered by the eruption of volcano Thera almost 3,500 years ago. Thera was the most powerful eruption ever witnessed, and the horror that came after it may have inspired the legend. Based on new evidence found on the seafloor off the coast of Caesarea, scientists now believe that this wave raced over 600 miles across Santorini. Anyone watching from afar would have witnessed the people and the architecture of the Minoan Empire dragged beneath the waves. Still, despite these discoveries, some even think that Atlantis resides in the Bahamas, or even Japan, or maybe in my pool in the backyard. I guess there's no harm in looking, so get your scuba gear ready. Next up, we have one for all the mummy fans. Coming in at number 8, we have the discovery of over 160 coffins discovered in Saqqara, Egypt this last year. The Saqqara necropolis is a burial ground in the ancient capital of Memphis that has been undergoing excavation for over 3 years. This is the first time these coffins have seen the light of day, or any other humans for that matter, in 2,500 years. One of the mummies, which was wrapped in cloth, was discovered through X-ray technology to be so well preserved that the entire inner structure was intact. Along with the mummies and sarcophagi, 40 artifacts have been found as well, including funerary masks and figurines. There is no doubt that there will be plenty more to reveal in the coming year, along with plenty more questions. Coming in at number 7, we're going all the way back 5,000 years ago. If you're a fan of Outlander or just tried and true mysteries altogether, you know about Stonehenge. But for those who don't, well, I'll just tell you. Stonehenge is an ancient circular structure of megaliths dating back all the way to 2500 BCE in Salisbury, Wiltshire, England. 92 stones, all ranging in size, make up the structure, but no one knows who built it for sure and where they come from. The smaller stones in the center, called blue stones, have been traced back to Wales, but up until last July, no one had any idea where the Silcrete Sarsen stones traced to. But according to an article published in July 2020, scientists now believe that these stones hail from Westwood, Wiltshire, around 25 kilometers north of the site. But the question still remains, how did they get to Salisbury? The Sarsen megaliths weigh individually around 50,000 pounds and somehow ended up 25 kilometers south of where they came from. Someone had to drag them there, but the question of who and how still remains. Now it's time to look to the sky. There are plenty of mysteries in the great beyond, and scientists can't get enough of them. If you've ever watched a science fiction show or TV show, then you're familiar with black holes as pretty effective plot devices. Coming in at number 6, we have the discovery of a new type of black hole, one based on a theory Einstein predicted 100 years ago. In 2020, researchers at Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, aka LIGO, announced that they had yet again discovered ripples in space-time. What? What does that mean? These ripples are called gravitational waves, which are a result of two massive objects colliding in space, i.e. black holes or neutron stars. The last recorded similar disturbance was in 2019, a result of two neutron stars, which are dense remnants of dead stars, colliding. But this time, they didn't find any sign of collision, which means that the theory of two neutron stars colliding and immediately forming a black hole can in fact happen. Einstein predicted this a century ago, though he never thought that we would be able to measure gravitational waves. Scientists still want to wait and accumulate more examples of the phenomenon before officially classifying classifying it as a new kind of black hole, but still, it definitely makes you wonder what other predictions have been made that are waiting out there to be discovered. Which brings me to number 5. The search for signs of life continues as scientists discover a substance produced by anaerobic microbes on Earth in Venus's atmosphere. Phosphine is often produced by volcanoes or lightning strikes, but with the amount they found in the atmosphere, it had to be made by something else. Anaerobic microbes also produce phosphine here on Earth, which gives scientists the idea that there could be some kind of life just next door. After more tests, however, it turns out that there wasn't nearly as much in the atmosphere as initially predicted. But even with a smaller amount, there's still a chance of life on Venus. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to welcoming some new neighbors. But Venus may not be the only place to find life or even to home. Coming in at number 4, the exciting new discovery of water on Ceres, the largest dwarf planet located on the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Of course, scientists don't think that Earth can be our home forever, so we're always looking for new real estate, and we may have found one. In August 2020, NASA's Dawn orbiter captured images of water seeping onto the surface of Ceres. The search for a habitable planet with water is crucial when seeking out a potential new home, so of course this got scientists super excited. It's speculated that the water comes from a saltwater reservoir located 25 miles beneath Ceres' Okator crater. It could be hundreds of miles wide, and some scientists even speculate a reservoir the size of an ocean. Should the call arise, are you ready to pack your bags and go where few have gone before? But coming back down to our beautiful home we call Earth, we've got number 3 coming in very, very hot. We are getting closer and closer to number 1, and if you're enjoying these crazy universal finds, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe for more mysteries. This one really gets me excited, because according to a study published on January 28, 2020, we have now found the oldest recorded material on Earth to date. Scientists analyzed fragments of meteors in Australia that apparently contain stardust from 5 to 7 billion years ago. That's older than the oldest rock formations on the planet, which date to around 4.4 billion years. Why is this so exciting? Well, I'll tell you. The evidence found within these materials support a theory that the majority of the stars formed in an explosion over 7 billion years ago instead of gradually over time. It always blows my mind to think that life just exploded into existence. I mean, come on, how cool is that? So we've talked about potential new life on Venus and water on Ceres, but what about actual aliens? Are they out there? And better yet, already here? Well, among some of the weird crazy things that happened in 2020, someone may have let it spill that aliens do exist and they have been trying to contact us. Former Israeli space security chief says that aliens exist and that ex-President Trump knows about it. The former head of Israeli Defense Ministry Space Directorate claimed that the unidentified flying objects have asked not to publish that they are here, but humanity is not ready yet. He also claims that the extraterrestrials are curious and want to understand the fabric of the universe. Ashed then goes on to say that President Trump was aware and was going to tell the world before being persuaded to keep the news to himself in order to prevent hysteria. I mean, like we didn't have enough to deal with in 2020. He also continues to say that there is an underground base in Mars which includes both American and alien representatives. This story sounds super insane and definitely too good to be true. So is it? Who knows? I guess we will find out for sure when the time is right. And last but not least, we have to end at number 1 on one of the biggest and creepiest mysteries of the universe that still have scientists baffled. Landing on number 1, let's talk about dark energy. The universe is said to be made from 5% actual matter and 25% dark matter. So what's the extra 70%? At the rate the universe is expanding, scientists think that the rest of the universe is a substance called dark energy. That sounds like a supervillain, a force with enough power to tear the universe apart. While dark matter tries to tie particles together, dark energy does the exact opposite. The idea of dark energy surfaced in 1998 when a supernova observed through the Hubble Space Telescope showed that the universe expanded at a slower pace in the past than it does today. Scientists then realized that in fact, gravity wasn't slowing down the expansion of the universe. In fact, it wasn't slowing down at all, it was accelerating, and they didn't know why or what was causing it. Einstein was the first person to realize that empty space was not nothing, and one explanation for what dark energy is the property of space. Theorists still don't quite know how to explain this, so for now they have given it the name of dark energy.
First up, in our 10th spot today, we have screaming mummies. Okay, when you think of a classic mummy, what do you see? I'm going to assume you just replied, I see the mummy's face, and it looks like it's screaming as its mouth is, wide open. For a very long time, it was believed that mummies found with their mouth open were possibly people that were tortured to death, especially those found with their hands bounded together. But in most recent years, scientists have learned how silly that theory might be because most mummies are actually found with that permanent screaming expression. During the mummification process, if the jaw isn't strapped shut, then the jaw naturally falls open when it begins to decay. But then again, we're also sure that some of the mummies were most likely buried alive, but it is possible that it could be too hard at this point to fully know. In our number 9 spot today is the mass grave of the headless Vikings. It was a sunny day. Just another casual digging expedition for these archaeologists, digging up the side of an old roadway in Dorset, UK. But suddenly, they dug up something extraordinary. It was a grave site for 54 Vikings, and they were all headless. The leg and arm bones and heads and torsos were all together neatly in separate piles. The archaeologists didn't know what to make of this, so their theory was that these people were captured by the locals and they were murdered and dismembered by the villagers who took some of their heads for souvenirs. Well, that's terrifying. Later on, they revamped that theory and they believed that perhaps that this was some kind of ritualistic sacrifice performed at this time. Yeah, perhaps scientists didn't want us to know this because, well, that is terrifying. Coming up in today's 8th spot, we have something that I personally think is highly unsettling, and I would like to inquire as to why wasn't this on the news stations everywhere around the world when it was discovered? Because this one is kinda hard to believe that it is real. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's just a cat that was carved into the hills of Peru. Yep, a cat. Come on, a cat? That's so creepy. I mean, I'm a dog person myself, so perhaps I'm a little biased, but I mean, cultures have been known to worship and honor the cat throughout centuries, including the Egyptians and, well, North Americans nowadays. They have, a lot of crazy cat ladies, but who knows, maybe there's a higher reason that cats were continuously worshipped and perhaps we should honor them. This cat geoglyph was found in the Nazca Desert and it is said to be the oldest one in its region, dating to 200 BC to 100 BC. The cat is apparently 120 feet. Wow, how isn't this more known? I'm mind blown. All the crazy cat Karens are saying, excuse me, I knew this. Coming up in our 7th spot today, we have the Tomb of Sunken Skulls. Found in the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed in Motala, Sweden, archaeologists stumbled upon a mysterious stone structure. After some digging, they were able to eventually unearth animal bones, stone tools, and 8,000-year-old skulls of 10 people aging from young to old. Sometimes it's hard for me to fathom that it is possible for archaeologists to know that something is really that old. Like, how is this possible? That we are able to know this, and yet we haven't made a time machine yet. But also, if you really sit and think about how far we've come in the last 100 years, it really makes you think, holy, I wish I could travel in time to see how people actually lived then. Because even with our discoveries to paint a picture, it's still quite hard to imagine. They also found fragments of one skull deliberately put into the skull of another. What purpose was this for? The archaeologists concluded that actually 11 people were butchered in a stone hut, with no other discovery as to why. But one last final horrific detail: some of the skulls had stakes embedded into them, and it was concluded that they were perhaps mounted for some funeral purpose or as a sort of trophy after the defeat of its opponents. In our 6th spot today, we have a discovery that honestly, I wish I didn't know about. For all the mothers out there that are feeling a little sensitive, definitely, close your ears to this one. While on an expedition deep in the underground sewer in Ashkelon, Israel, expecting to only find dirt and, well, poop, archaeologists discovered thousands of tiny bones. After further inspection, they discovered that the bones were of newborn babies, maybe around 100 of newborn babies. Just horrible. It wasn't completely uncommon though for ancient times to dispose of newborns, particularly girls who were considered not as valuable to the family as boys. But it is interesting though that there were actually quite a few boys that were found. It was and still is so curious that those bones were disposed of in a sewer. If I could guess, I think this sounds like the case of some religious sacrifice, but Who knows? In our fifth spot today, we have the Mammoth Graveyard. An expedition in Russia led to a discovery of what looks like a graveyard of mammoth bones from 25,000 years ago. The site has been under excavation since 2014, and it is said that it measures 40 feet across. Whoa. At this point, archaeologists still don't know how it was built, and also why. What was the purpose of this? I suspect aliens. Aliens came down to Earth and had a sacrificial mammoth ceremony and then gathered all of the bones in one area and left them for us humans to eventually clean up. That sounds possible. In our fourth spot today, we have severed hands. While on an Egyptian expedition, a group of archaeologists whom were digging near the ancient city of Avaris discovered a few chopped off hands. The hands were found in what was once a throne room, and therefore there was an immediate understanding that this was some kind of gesture for the king. The team ended up discovering 14 hands, and the even more interesting part, it was all right hands. The hands are about 3,600 years old. Eventually, it was discovered that they were buried when King Kian ruled over the city. Only through reviewing ancient writing were they able to put the pieces together and see that during this time, the soldiers would present a severed right hand of his enemy to the king in exchange for gold. It was said to be a symbolic gesture, showing that they are depriving their enemy of power as they will no longer have their hand. Fascinating. It's crazy to believe that we humans once were in a headspace where we were chopping off hands so as to take other humans' power away from them. Fascinating. In our third spot today, we have the good old Neanderthals. Archaeologists have discovered that some 40,000 years ago, Belgians, also known as Neanderthals, were practicing cannibalism. They used to make a meal out of their friends and create tools out of their bones. At least they weren't wasteful. This discovery was made in a cave where Neanderthal bones were discovered along with marks of butchery. There were also bones of horses and other animals in the cave, but they seemed to be stripped apart just like the human bones were, leading the archaeologists to conclude that these Neanderthals seemed to make no distinction between man and animal, which poses the question, at what point did we start making this distinction? And are there still people who don't? Google the conspiracies around this at your own risk. In our second spot today, we have the claw. In 1986, while on an expedition on Mount Owen in New Zealand, a giant claw was found. Deep within a cave in the mountain, the archaeologists discovered this massive beast-like claw. It was eventually discovered that it was the 3,000-year-old remains of an upland moa, a flightless bird that went extinct, which you would think to be impossible as well. It kind of reminds me of how all the Kardashian-like girls wear their nails these days. I mean, how do they function with those nails? I can barely type and I barely have nails. Melissa. In our number one spot today, we have the chemical warfare. On an expedition in 1933, archaeologist Robert de Mesnil du Buisson discovered 19 Roman soldiers in a tunnel. Apparently, they all look like they died trying to flee from something. I can't imagine what during those times. Traces of sulfur and bitumen were actually found along the walls until it was eventually discovered that all signs point to this being one of the first attempts at chemical warfare. Whoa. And honestly, hopefully one of the last. That's all I'm saying.
Number 10 are ancient organisms. If you're anything like me, you probably assumed that the Earth's crust was way too hot to allow for any kind of life. Well, as it turns out, that couldn't be further from the truth. A study that came out in 2016 revealed that there are actually tiny little microbes called Hadesarchia that have not only been surviving, but thriving in the fiery hot temps. At first glance, they kind of resemble bacteria, but apparently the two groups are about as similar as a human and a tree. The name Hadesarchia roughly translates to hellish ancient things, which seems appropriate considering their spicy living habitat. What is especially strange about these tiny microbes is that at the depth of the crust, there's an intense lack of oxygen and light. But scientists are theorizing that they make do with whatever forms of carbon seep down their way. Plus, them being so small helps the whole ordeal, as they require very little energy to replicate or do much of anything at all. Coming in at
Number 9 is an underground ocean. According to a study done back in 2015, scientists believe that below your feet, within the Earth's crust, lies roughly 6 quintillion gallons of water. I didn't even know quintillion was a number to begin with. For reference, that's about 1,000 times more water than all of the Great Lakes combined, or enough to cover all of the planet's land masses in nearly 600 feet of water. Essentially, if you exclude water that is frozen inside glacier caps, about 95% of the planet's fresh water lies in the Earth's crust. I'm sure you're thinking, what great news! This could stop world water issues. Well, before you get too excited, due to intense droughts in California, more and more of this groundwater is being used every year. And once it's gone, we may never get it back. And worse, the depletion of water in certain areas is actually causing the ground to sink over time as it's being used faster than it's renewed. So if something doesn't change, we could be in a bit of trouble. Number 8. A vacation. In 2018, a study gave evidence that the globe may have taken a wee little 100 million year nap during the Paleoproterozoic era. Say that 10 times fast. From what scientists can tell, the Earth stayed relatively dormant, tectonic plates hardly moved, sediment slowed down exponentially, and very few volcanoes were erupting. Again, this is for an entire 100 million years. This was also coming after a time when the Earth's innards were notoriously hot and caused an insane amount of volcanic activity, so for it to just stop for so long and then restart again is very weird, and they haven't really been able to figure out why. But after so much time being dormant, when it finally did get back into the swing of things, volcanoes were blowing up so much that it actually changed the continental crust's composition and caused it to fracture into smaller pieces, eventually resulting in how tectonic movement behaves today. Coming in at number 7, the Mayotte mystery. Back in 2018, strange waves rippled across the planet for nearly 20 minutes. And believe it or not, scientists didn't even notice. That was until a civilian who happened to be watching a live seismograph feed brought it to their attention. The strange waves began November 11th near the island of Mayotte, which is a small island a few miles west of Madagascar, and triggered equipment across several countries in Africa before traveling across the sea and pinging sensors in New Zealand, Chile, Canada, and Hawaii. I mean, that is some serious distance. Apparently, seismologists have never seen anything like it since. According to the size of the waves, a magnitude 5 eruption should have happened that day, but it never did. Even stranger is that apparently earthquakes typically release waves with several frequencies, but the Mayotte waves had only one signal that repeated itself every 17 seconds. Many seismologists have theorized what exactly went down that strange day, but truthfully, much of the mystery about the phenomenon remains unanswered. An alien interference, perhaps? Nah, I'm just kidding. Coming in at number 6, it's melting. I truly wish I was rickrolling you, but unfortunately this is no joke. A group of University of Wyoming professors and students have identified an unusual belt of igneous rocks that stretch about 2,000 miles through the western side of North America. Igneous rocks are what happens when magma or molten rock cool and crystallize, either in a volcano or on the Earth's surface. It's normal to find these rocks along chains of volcanoes, but this one is much farther inland than you would expect, and it contains no evidence of producing volcanoes. Well, nothing is for sure. They believe it could have to do with an event called laramide orogeny, which was essentially the origin of most mountain ranges in Wyoming. And despite a lack of igneous rock there, they have a theory that the tectonic progresses contributed to the melting of the Earth's crust. The other theory is that water infiltrated the deep crust, lowering the melting point of the rocks and increasing the amount of magma. Listen, I know that was a lot of big words, but essentially the crust is melting and it's, well, probably not great. Coming in at number 5, a growth spurt. One thing I did not have on my 2023 bingo card was learning that the Earth's crust can actually grow. Well, at least sort of. Back in 2021, Curtin University researchers set out to test the theory that portions of Earth's ancient crust acted as seeds from which later generations of crust grew. Kind of like a sourdough starter for the planet. At least that's what I'm telling myself. They were able to confirm that theory by using ancient crystals from eroded rocks found in stream sediments in Greenland, which frankly sounds a little witchy, and I mean that as a compliment. Apparently these findings not only advance the understanding of the production of the crust, but have also revealed a 3 billion year old growth spurt that occurred when mantle temperatures reached an all-time peak and the magma from below kind of oozed into the older fragments, and voila! The more you know. Coming in at number 4, a breakaway piece. Okay, so this might not have been found inside the crust of the Earth, but I think that you will agree that this one still counts. A few years ago in 2017, scientists discovered a piece of extremely old crust on the surface of the planet. Now, when I say extremely old, that's no exaggeration. Researchers have estimated it dates back at least 4.3 billion years, which is pretty significant considering the planet itself is estimated to have been around only a smidge longer at 4.5 billion. This particular chunk of rock was discovered enveloped in granite along the eastern shore of the Hudson's Bay in Quebec, an area referred to as the Canadian Shield. It was a pretty crazy discovery considering up until that point, the oldest piece of crust uncovered was only 2.7 billion years old, which, while that's still obvious ancient, is no match to the newest discovery. Researchers believe that this is going to help them not only understand the development of our planet, but also understand the development of other planets in the solar system, and I mean, who knows what will be uncovered from that. Coming in at number 3, a giant abyss. Now, there is a lot about the planet that I don't understand, and I'm okay with that, honestly. But finding out that there is a giant hole in the Earth's crust that scientists all know about, that is supposedly fine, kind of broke my brain a little bit. Researchers believe that the hole was caused when a piece of the Earth's crust that measured roughly 60,000 square kilometers was ripped apart roughly 2 million years ago by a 120 kilometer extension along a detachment fault. It's now been coined the Banda Detachment as it sits under the Banda Sea in eastern Indonesia and is roughly 7 kilometers deep, which is pretty creepy to think about the big hole in the planet. Luckily, there are some upsides. Scientists think it will help them understand tsunami risks in the area, so at least there's that. Coming in at number 2 are giant blobs. Okay, so full transparency, these are not found in the Earth's crust. But before you start pointing fingers, they are really strange and no one knows what the heck they are, so it only felt fair to include them on the list. The farthest that humans have ever been able to tunnel down is about 7.6 miles. But thanks to advances in technology, scientists are now able to look even further down with the help of seismological data. In 2016, a team of researchers from Arizona State University used this technology to dive into a decade-long mystery within the Earth. Apparently, there are 2 blob-type masses the size of a large continent, one located below the Pacific Ocean and the other Africa, and no one has ever been able to determine what they are. The blobs are believed to be made of a different composition than the rest of the mantle, but truthfully, they have no real clue what they are made of either. At least not yet. So here's hoping it's something that will soon be explained by science and not some creepy alien life form on Earth. And last up in our number 1 spot is a missing chunk. So not only is the crust kind of melting, not only is there a 7-kilometer void under the sea thanks to a 2 million year old fault line, but there is apparently also a missing chunk. I mean, it just keeps getting better. Apparently deep under the Atlantic Ocean lies what is being described as an open wound on the ocean floor. The wound was puzzling scientists for years because it defies the existing knowledge of how tectonic plates should work. That was until a team of British scientists set sail to try and figure it out for themselves. They came to the conclusion that the erosion was due to the hypothesis of snowball Earth, a theory that explains within those billion years or so there were intervals where up to a third of the Earth's crust was sawn off by roaming glaciers. Those sawn off chunks were then essentially sucked into the mantle by tectonic plates, exposing a chunk of the Earth without a crust. Now, I I won't lie to you, this one is hard to wrap my brain around because I mean, a missing chunk of anything never really sounds like a good thing, but I'm just gonna trust the people that are smarter than me on this one and try not to think about how close it sounds to the Stranger Things underworld portal.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Gliese 581g. Kicking this list off with an exoplanet hiding in the constellation Libra. Yeah, to all my fellow Libras out there, this one's for you. Happy early birthday. It was discovered back in 2010, but Gliese 581g, still to this day, its confirmation is hard to pinpoint. Yeah, the thing with exoplanets is that they're a little far away. They're a little hard to see out there. But somehow the fine minds over at the University of Puerto Rico at Arecibo calls Gliese 581 the top candidate for alien life. You heard it here, folks. There we go. It's only sitting 20 light years away from our very own sun, and Gliese 581g is 3 times as large as Earth. So to all my Libras, bring a friend or two. Let's party it up. We got room. If you're a fan of New Year's parties, again, this is the planet for you. Every 30 days, we're counting down to a new year. So we don't have to wait too long to party. Off to a good start. Number 9, HD 85512b. This next planet's in HD, Chris. There you go. Put on your 3D glasses. Announced in 2011 alongside 50 other planets. Okay. HD 85512b was discovered by the High Accuracy Radial Velocity Planet Searcher instrument, or to save you some breath, HARPS for short, over in Chile. Yeah, Chile's casually exploring 50 planets over on their weekend. Okay. It's wild how some of these discoveries happened so long ago, but we don't talk about them nearly enough. Again, same deal as the Gliese 581g, this planet too is 3 times the size of Earth. It's actually 3.5 times bigger. Yeah, as far as commutes go, it'll take some time to get there. Yeah, we're still working on that part. The HD planet hides around 35 light years away from us. This one you can find in the constellation Vela, aka the snail. Is it truly habitable? Is there water on this planet? Well, that's to be determined. Our boy James Webb's gonna take a peek real soon. Number 8, Gliese 581e. Wait a minute, how many Glises are there? Is a single Gliese a goose? What's going on here? In typical part 2 fashion, I had to include another Gliese. There's actually 4 of them in total. I'm not going to do all 4 though. For more than 4 years, the HARP spectrograph attached to the ESO telescope in Chile, they were finding groundbreaking discoveries for 4 years straight. Astronomers found the lightest exoplanet so far to this day. The lightest planet, that's crazy. This one is quite small compared to others on this list. Gliese 581e is only twice the mass of our Earth, whereas the planet furthest out, Gliese 581d, orbits its star every 67 days. While Gliese 581e completes its orbit every 3 days. You know what I mean? Yeah, having a birthday every 3 days? Oh, what a nightmare that would be. Never going to this planet. This one can stay off our radar. Little small Gliese, little Gliese. Number 7, carbon on Mars. It's one thing to have Elon Musk tweeting about going to Mars or whatever he's doing over there, buying Twitter, I guess. But when NASA talks about it, I get a weird feeling, you know? It's NASA, you know? They're old school. They're like, we may have found carbon 40 years ago. Yeah. That's just it. That's the tweet. In 2022, just back in January, NASA's Curiosity rover measured carbon signatures on Mars. This is huge. Paul Mahaffey, principal investigator of the sample analysis at Mars, he says, quote, "We're finding things on Mars that are tantalizingly interesting, but we would really need to get more evidence to say that we've identified life." End quote. Okay, so we're close. It sounds like we're a little close. I don't know. Side note, imagine going on a Willy Wonka trip to Mars with Elon. Do we want to go? Like, he's announcing all these trips to Mars. I don't want to do that. I can't even drive to Ottawa for 4 hours, let alone Mars for years. No way. I'm homesick already. Number 6, Ryan Graves' UFO sightings. I mentioned this a little bit back in part 1, but I of course have to add more. Back in 2017, a $22 million defense program was put in place. It was called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now its purpose was to study military encounters with UFOs. And at this point, Navy pilots were coming out with their own story. Their eyewitness account of seeing a UAP, or a UFO if you're old school. Eventually, come 2019, senators felt the need to be briefed on these sightings. It was that serious. After a vote by the Senate Intelligence Committee in June 2020, it was agreed that UAP reports were now to get added to the Intelligence Authorization Act for 2021 and going forward. That's crazy. That's why more and more footage is coming out now every other week, you know what I mean? These incidents were filmed ages ago, but only now are they being released. It's kind of cool. According to the Times, 120 incidents were studied during this case, and it turns out the US military is not responsible for any of the 120. If they happen to be advanced drones sent to spy on the military, it's kind of important to find out who sent them, know what I mean? And recently, a former Navy pilot, Ryan Graves, he spoke out to 60 Minutes, and he explained that these UAPs would pop up during training exercises every day for at least a couple of years. He says, and I quote, "If these were tactical jets from another country that were hanging out up there, it would be a massive issue. But because it looks slightly different, we're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're happy to just ignore the fact that these are out there watching us train every day." That's a quote from Ryan Graves, real pilot. And these are goosebumps for me. Awesome, I'm terrified. Are aliens real? What are we doing, man? Like, let's move on before I faint. My gosh. Number 5. Milky Way radio burst. On April 28th, 2020, 2 radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves, and they only lasted just a millisecond, but they left astronomers baffled. The reason for this is because this was the first time a fast radio burst had been detected this close to Earth. This signal was located only 30,000 light years from Earth, which places it in our Milky Way galaxy. That's pretty damn close. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, or again, CHIME if you want to save breath, they explained that the signal was so easy to pick up that CHIME wasn't even looking its direction and it still noticed the signal. It was loud and clear right in their peripheral vision. And another telescope, STARE 2, also saw it clear as day. Well, it looks like whatever the cause for the signal, someone or something, we saw it. So now what? We found you. You can come out now. Number 4. The Lorimer burst. This is a fast radio burst that was detected long ago. This was back in 2007, and it was named, of course, after the person who spotted it, Duncan Lorimer. Well, actually, it was discovered when Duncan assigned his student, David Narkovec, to look through archival data taken in 2001 by the Parkes radio dish in Australia. That's when they noticed. After analyzing this data, it was found that there was a dispersed burst that occurred on July 24th, 2001. This burst was less than 5 milliseconds long, and it was located just 3 degrees from the small Magellanic Cloud. It still isn't quite clear what caused said signal, but it's thought that perhaps it may have been a singular event, such as a supernova, or an Avengers level threat. One of the two. Number 3, light shifts. Back in 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a star that was newly discovered. Yeah, shifts in light. What's that about? This star sits about 1,280 light years away from Earth, and these shifts were very similar, as if something was passing in front of our view of the star. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or meteors or anything like that, so in turn, Jason whipped up an interesting theory that's lived rent-free in my head ever since. He stated that it's possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a slow orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Or maybe it's an asteroid. One of the two. Either way, I'm scared. Again. Number 2, Mount Rainier. Not to be confused with Mount Chiliad, although there's definitely aliens there as well. Mount Rainier in Washington was bumping and buzzing back in 1947. Pilot Kenneth Arnold made the first modern report of a flying saucer, or a UAP. Apparently it was a flying egg, actually, that's what it looked like. Kenneth saw 9 circular-shaped objects flying in formation. The classic formation, and they were flying at twice the speed of sound. So the Idaho pilot told the Air Force, and they laughed it off. They didn't believe him at all. He took this claim to his grave. Kenneth stood by what he saw until his death later in 1984. He said that he saw UAPs. He reached out to the Seattle Times in 1977, long before the movie Signs was made, and he said, "I made my report because I thought it was my duty. It was the only proper and American thing to do. I saw what I saw." End quote. And also end point. I'm, again, terrified. And finally, number 1. The lights. Okay, imagine you're driving home one night after a long shift at work. Maybe you worked late and it's midnight. You're driving and you see a V formation, the classic formation, in the sky made up of yellow and orange lights. Do you pull over? Do you assume you're just, beyond exhausted and maybe this is all in your head? Because that's what I would do. Back in 2001, on July 14th, drivers along the New Jersey Turnpike saw just that. It was a touch after midnight and cars legit pulled over and people got out to get a better look at what was in the sky. Everybody looked at this thing for around 15 minutes. It was just hovering over top of the Arthur Kill Waterway right between Staten Island and New Jersey. Just floating there, just doing alien stuff. One eyewitness, Joe Mavasio, recalls the sighting as one of the most amazing things he had ever seen. And then just like that, the lights vanished. They faded out one by one in typical alien fashion. Daniel Tarrant of the Carteret Police Department recalls seeing this with his own eyes as well. It was 16 golden covered lights in a V formation. Aliens are fun and all, but keep your eyes on the roads, my friends, I'm not looking at anything. Aliens or not, 10 and 2, we're getting home. That's it. Seatbelts, I'm checking those mirrors. No aliens back there. We're good.
Starting off at our number 10 spot, we have this attic treasure. A couple in the US was cleaning out their attic one day as they unfortunately were preparing for the bank to claim their home. They wanted to go through the boxes so as to not move any unnecessary items with them, and that is when they came across gold. Well, not actual gold, but it might as well have been. On the verge of losing their home, they stumbled upon a copy of Action Comics #1 that was dated back to 1938. There are only 99 known copies of this that exist, which obviously makes it extremely rare and even more valuable. This discovery led the couple to be able to sell their copy for $1.5 million. This didn't necessarily make the couple overwhelmingly rich, but I'd definitely say that going from having your house claimed by the bank to being a millionaire all in the span of an attic clean is definitely a reason for them to be in today's video. In our number 9 spot today, we have Opal Matrix. A man named Stuart Hughes from Liverpool hit the absolute jackpot one day while out with some of his partners in Australia. While searching in the outback, he came across the world's largest opal matrix. Once weighed, the stone was an unbelievable 55,000 carats, and it is about 30 centimeters long. The stone was obviously sent to auction, as one does when you find something like that, and it was valued at $1 million. $1 million for a day's work seems like a pretty stellar deal to me. Just for reference on how large of a find this was, the previous world record for an opal matrix that was found was only 6,100 carats, so this one is absolutely massive compared to that one. In our number 8 spot today, we have a metal detector jackpot. Again, in Australia, a local farmer was one day out and about and searching for something with his metal detector. It isn't quite clear what he was searching for, but he definitely found more than he was expecting. When the detector began going off, he dug a little bit and started to find little nuggets of gold. This was amazing until he kept digging and found an even better 5.5 kilogram chunk of gold. This find ended up getting him $315,000. It may not have been the largest find on today's list, but it certainly is better to have struck gold than to have found nothing at all. If any of you have a metal detector lying around, it might just be worth it to head out and see what you can find for the day. Maybe you'll find some little gold nuggets, but maybe you'll hit the jackpot just like this guy did. In our number 7 spot today, we have the $5 painting. You may have heard of Terry Horton before, as she became international news after her $5 find at a local thrift store. Terry used to be a truck driver, and she went into this thrift store one day in order to find a pick-me-up gift for a friend who was having a hard time. Upon giving the painting to this friend, it ended up being too large to fit in her trailer, so Terry took this painting back home and decided to sell it in a yard sale. Well, this turned out to be the second luckiest turn of events next to her finding it for $5 in the first place, because a local art teacher happened to come through on the day of the yard sale. The art teacher recognized the style of painting as that of Jackson Pollock and inquired further about it. Terry had absolutely no idea who the heck Jackson Pollock was, and that is when the art teacher informed her. There was controversy for a while over whether or not the painting was authentic, but that didn't stop collectors from immediately bidding on the piece. Terry turned down all of their bids, claiming she would only sell it for $50 million. Terry never sold the painting though, and she did end up passing away in 2019. She may not have received cash riches from this find, but she certainly left a wonderful gift for her family, and she did give them permission to sell it, but told them to never give it away. In our number 6 spot today, we have the baseball card. Apparently, I need to start shopping at thrift stores and antique shops more, because that seems to be where all of the unbelievable hidden gems keep accidentally being found. In 2009, an antique dealer found some old baseball cards, but one in particular stood out to her. What she didn't know is that this baseball card was from 1869. In fact, it was one of the first baseball cards ever made. Since she had no idea she hit the jackpot, she listed the card on eBay for a mere $10. She began getting a ton of interest from bidders, which of course made her suspicious, so she took down the listing, which I'm sure was to the dismay of everyone who had already placed a bid. When she realized exactly what she had found, she reposted this bid, but this time for a more appropriate $75,000. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Royal royal one. A miner from Australia was just doing his thing one day and decided to collect some ordinary rocks and stones. When he got home and was going through his findings for the day, he realized that there was a big, sparkly one sitting in the bottom of his bucket. He decided to keep it as a souvenir as he was obviously interested in that sort of thing, and he kept it with him for an entire 14 years. After all this time had passed, he decided to show it to a specialist, and this is when they revealed to him exactly what he had found. This stone was actually a very rare black opal that was worth an unbelievable $3 million. The stone was given the name the Royal One. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that he found that stone in the first place, or that he managed to keep a rock for 14 years without losing it and it turned out to pay off that big. Either way, he is one lucky man. In our number 4 spot today, we have penicillin. As it turns out, penicillin, which is an antibiotic that has saved most of us a lot of pain and suffering, was a bit of an accidental discovery and kind of a gross one. In 1928, Scottish biologist Alexander Fleming was returning home from a vacation. When he returned home and went back to work, he found a petri dish that he had left dirty was full of bacteria and mold, as I'm sure we would all expect it to. You might be wondering how this disgusting discovery is relevant, but this is when he realized that the mold actually killed the bacteria. This is when he identified the mold as being from the genus Penicillium. This is what led to the further testing and creation of the most used antibiotic, which is incredibly effective at curing a wide variety of bacterial ailments. In our number 3 spot today, we have the beach rock. Okay, this one is super gross, but a good find is a good find, especially when the discovery happens to be made by an 8-year-old boy. Charlie Naismith was just a boy from the UK and was on the beach one day doing whatever it is that kids do on beaches when he made this discovery. He stumbled upon what he thought was a strange-looking rock and he decided to take it home with him. Once at home, him and his dad sat down to Google the rock to see if they could find out more, and boy did they ever. They first discovered that this was not a rock at all, and then they discovered that they were about to receive money that they did not anticipate. This rock turned out to be ambergris, which is actually whale vomit. My first reaction to that would be that I would be about to vomit until I realized that this is actually a very valuable thing, as it is used in many perfumes, and it was actually valued at $63,000. It's hard to believe that an innocent boy stumbled upon a disgusting discovery only to have it pay off big time. It's also unbelievable that whale vomit can get you $63,000. In our number 2 spot today, we have the golden frame. This is one that is just so hard to believe, you guys. A collector in 1989 bought a painting from a flea market for $4 because he thought the frame was nice. Once home, he attempted to remove the painting from the frame, but since it was a $4 painting, the thing just kinda fell apart, and that's when the unexpected was revealed. He found what first appeared to be an old document, but upon further examination, he realized that this was the Declaration of Independence. Like the first printing of it in his possession. It ended up being valued at around $1 million at the time, which doesn't seem like enough for the original Declaration of Independence, but also I'd trade $4 for $1 million any day of the week. In our number 1 spot today, we have Peter and Eric. Peter Watling was a British farmer who had misplaced his hammer one day, and instead of going out to replace it, he decided to ask his buddy Eric Laws to help him find it by helping him make a homemade metal detector. A little bit of an unorthodox method, but it paid off big time. They didn't find the hammer, but they found something so much better. The pair unearthed a wooden jewelry box that was filled with coins that totaled to about $15 million. Imagine searching for your hammer and instead you stumble upon $15 million. I'm not exactly sure why the pair didn't get the $15 million, but they did, however, still get a pretty good price. Eric received $2.3 million for the find, which he generously shared with Peter. It sounds like these two were not only the best of friends, but also the luckiest best of friends.
Number 10, the school. This person recounted their story of how their school seemed to suddenly change. They started a new school just a few years ago and remember exploring the school for the first time. They have a clear memory of walking up a flight of stairs to get to the second floor, seeing 2 water fountains to the left and the bathrooms to the right. They didn't return there for a while as it was on the opposite end of their classroom and they had no need to go there. The next school year, they walked down down to that end of the school again and realized that the staircase was nowhere to be found and there was no second floor at all, merely a blank wall remaining where the stairs had been. He wasn't the only one to remember it either, a few of his other friends having memories of the second floor. There was also no record or evidence of the second floor having potentially been demolished in that time, a potential glitch in the matrix putting a staircase where there had never actually been one. Number 9. Tomato soup. This person described their glitch in the matrix, also thinking it possible that they may have fallen into a parallel universe. Him and a close friend were working on a creative project together and they met each week at the same restaurant to go over the progress and discuss their work. The restaurant they always visited had a wall that was lined with jars of Caesar dressing and vodka sauce, knowing that these were the exact things on the wall as they would examine them and even read out the calorie contents. Their father then passed away, and in an attempt to get back to normal, he decided to meet up with the friend at the restaurant again the week after. But when he got there, he realized that the walls were now lined with jars of Caesar dressing and tomato soup instead of vodka sauce. While they could have just swapped them out, he says he asked the staff and they said they had never had vodka sauce on the wall. The person believing that the shock of their father's death caused them to experience a glitch in the matrix. Number 8. Different language. This person shared the fact that they had always been a sleep talker and even a sleepwalker, his family apparently never being able to distinguish whether or not he was awake as he would always have his eyes open. He tells a story of how he had been close with his freshman roommate in college, him not minding the sleep talking as he would find it amusing to hear what the person had to say. One night he apparently started talking in his sleep about wanting a hamburger, the roommate replying that, well, everything was closed. The person insisted they needed a hamburger now, and the conversation continued like this until he eventually fell back asleep. When he woke up, his roommate said to him, "I didn't know you could speak Spanish." They had apparently had the entire conversation in Spanish, despite the person not actually knowing the language. The roommate had studied Spanish for many years and swears that he was totally fluent. The roommate's girlfriend, who had been on FaceTime that night, even backed him up, saying that she too had heard him speak in Spanish. Number 7. Outside reality. This person was on a trip with his friends floating down Lake Powell, going deeper and deeper into the canyon. He suddenly had a thought cross his head that it was so beautiful it looked fake, like it was specifically designed to be that way. As soon as he thought it, his friend turned to him and said, "Dude, it feels like we're in a movie and we're looking at movie props. It looks so fake." The two mildly freaking out about how they seemed to briefly share a brain cell. A little later on, he said he experienced what he describes as an altered state of consciousness, saying he felt like the facade of the human experience was dropped, and all his friends looked like angelic beings enjoying Earth. At the same time, the same friend turned to him and said, "Dude, look at our friends. They're so beautiful and alive, they look like angels." He says he believes they were able to see past the simulation and tap into the true reality. He also clarifies that they were both sober, and it wasn't just the trip of a lifetime. Number 6. Zombie. This person, who works in the admitting department of their local hospital, believes they experienced a glitch where the past changed and somebody came back from the dead. A few years ago, one of their co-workers in another department passed away, him being responsible for processing the co-worker's obituary. The co-worker's daughter was good friends with their cousin, so they saw her at the co-worker's house after the funeral, holding a large ceremony for the mother. Then recently, the co-worker's daughter walked in, saying that her mom was in the ER. The person was obviously confused as they knew that the girl's mother was dead. Due to being so shocked, a co-worker had to step in and look up the girl's mother, showing it to be the woman who died years ago, but she was actually alive and in the hospital. The person not being able to find the obituary that they had processed. When they spoke later, the girl said that other people had also been coming up to her about the situation, saying that they too remember her mother dying. Number 5. Supernatural children. This person described how she believes her child glitched in the simulation, or perhaps was having her superhero origin story. Late at night, she heard her 2-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son talking and giggling in their bedroom past their bedtime, so she went in to check on them. When she stepped into the room past the gate, she could make out their dark forms, each on their bed, and their voices coming from the 2 distinct places. As they were talking to each other, she felt something brush the back of her leg, but ignored it as she thought it was just one of their cats, still hearing her daughter's voice clearly coming from the bed as they spoke. She then turned around expecting to see the cat to remove it from the room, but instead saw her 2-year-old daughter suddenly behind her. She says she heard no footsteps footsteps and didn't see her daughter leave the bed, her voice still coming from that area. She believes that there was a glitch in the simulation, causing her daughter to teleport. Number 4. Body swap. This person tells a story of how someone they know apparently swapped bodies, a glitch causing them to appear as someone different. She and her husband had 2 neighbors across the street, another couple. The wife was a tiny blonde woman who would often wave across the street and they would chat occasionally. Eventually, the blonde woman went into labor and was taken to the hospital. When they returned, she saw a woman get out of the car with the baby, but instead it was a tall, large brunette with dark skin. Assuming that it was a relative who was helping with the baby, she and her husband brought over cookies and spoke to them. That's when she realized that the woman wasn't a relative, but the wife. Same name, personality, and everything except her body was now completely different. The poster's husband remembers the woman as having been blonde as well, them making jokes about having wife swapped at the hospital, much to the confusion of the neighbors. Number 3. The moon. This person was driving down the road with his mother when they both experienced the sky glitching. They were driving down a completely straight road to the theater on July 2nd when they were stopped at a red light, looking up and admiring the moon against the sunset. Just a few minutes later, they were going down that same straight road when they looked up again and saw that the moon had moved a significant distance, the mother noticing it as well and even looking scared at the thought. They then arrived at the parking lot and saw that the moon was still in the moved position, the person suddenly feeling the urge to look away. They say that they wanted to stare, but it felt like some sort of force was stopping them from looking. As soon as they felt like they could look again, the moon had suddenly moved back to the original position in just a few seconds. Them and their mother with no idea how to explain what had happened. They looked it up on Twitter and only found one other person saying, "Did the moon just move?" Number 2. The town. This person lives in a very rural area and as a result knows every town and road that's nearby. One day he was going to a different county to look at a lawnmower, another area that he was very familiar with. Well, on the way there, he drove through a town that has never been there before. It went by the same name as a small community that was normally there, but instead of just a few houses, there were now stores, cafes, and streetlights. Confused, he had to pull over and try and figure out what was going on. All the buildings looking brand new and clean, a contrast to the other towns surrounding it. He went into a cafe and asked the girl working there where he was, her responding with the same name of the small community. When he asked when all of it was built, she responded with the 1800s. Confused, he quickly left and continued on to get his lawnmower. And on the way back, all the new buildings and stores were gone again, only the small old community standing in its place. Number 1. Teleportation. This person was driving home from work with their coworker to the place that they were staying at. They had driven the route a few times already and knew it pretty well. It was about a 7-minute drive and was a straight path until a turn into the hotel. They had made it pretty far and were about a block away, the sign visible at the side of the road. But then suddenly, they weren't. They looked around and saw that they were on a highway about to take an exit ramp 20 minutes away from their destination. Both him and the coworker having experienced the same thing. The time on the clock still reading the same time it had outside the hotel. Ever since then, he says he feels disconnected from life and disoriented, like something is still wrong. A glitch through the simulation potentially making the person realize that everything is not as it seems.
Number 10. Immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish is a species of small, biologically immortal jellyfish found worldwide in tropical waters. Given the nickname immortal jellyfish for its ability to revert back to a polyp stage while it's starving or in danger and basically escaping death, researchers believe this jellyfish may hold the cure to cancer. Under normal conditions, its life cycle is divided into 4 parts. The union of the male and female gametes produces a larva or planula. It then attaches to the seabed as a polyp, similar to an anemone. The polyps then release ephora, or a young jellyfish, into the phase prior to sexual maturity. They become jellyfish, reproduce sexually, and start over. But if they are stressed by an environmental threat, the jellyfish revert. After reproducing, they return to the previous phases, becoming polyps in the ocean floor again. As far as scientists know, jellyfish can repeat the process indefinitely. Thus, they are said to be biologically immortal. They can be eaten by a predator or fall into the hands of a swimmer, but they do not die of old age, which is pretty cool. Number 9. River at the bottom of the Black Sea. Sea. The Black Sea is one of the most isolated from the world's oceans, and there is a river flowing along the bottom of it. Now, it's just not a normal river. Oh no, it's complete with trees, leaves, and even waterfalls. One major difference is that the underwater river, when rounding a bend, moves in currents spinning the opposite direction from those on land. It has been an intriguing aspect of the ocean since it was found. According to scientists, if the river was on land, it would be the 6th largest river in the world in terms of the volume of water flowing through it. The discovery of the river, announced on August 1st, 2010, was made by scientists at the University of Leeds, and it is the first of its kind in the world. Number 8. The Mariana Trench. In the western Pacific Ocean, you will find the deepest part of the sea. The Mariana Trench is deeper than the height of Mount Everest, 43 miles wide, and a massive 1,580 miles long, which is 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. A certified U.S. national monument, only small areas of the Mariana Trench have been explored. James Cameron reached the bottom in a submersible vessel Deep Sea Challenger in 2012, with the last successful attempt to search the ocean floor coming in 2020, when the Chinese submersible Fenduji made it all the way down. Several new species of underwater creatures have been discovered in the Mariana Trench, with most living on the surface of the ocean floor, including a type of sea cucumber. Explorers will find themselves in total darkness as they continue to understand what else lies in the deepest parts of the ocean and how marine life manages to survive. Number 7. Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas. The Los Pagodas was long considered a myth by many because of the lack of scientific evidence of its existence. But in 2004, when the infamous Indian Ocean tsunami hit, for a brief moment when the waters parted, large rock-like structures emerged from the water and were witnessed by many onlookers. The Los Mahabalipuram Pagodas in India, making it an incredible discovery. The remains of an ancient city were found in 2001 off the coast of India. Scientists retrieved many different items from the large city, including artwork, hand tools, fossilized bones, and pottery shards. What makes the discovery incredible is that the city is thought to be around 9,000 years old, which predates to the earliest Indian civilizations that sprung up 4,000 years ago. There is still not a lot known about this ancient city, as scientists and archaeologists continue to search the area for more clues and debate how old the city really is and who once inhabited it. But wow. Number 6. The 2,400-year-old boat in the Black Sea. Archaeologists working with engineers from the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, aka MAP, have discovered a 23-meter shipwreck that has laid undisturbed for more than 2,400 years. The find is believed to be the oldest intact shipwreck ever discovered. Thanks to the lack of oxygen in the Black Sea and the fact it was discovered a mile below the surface means it is exceptionally well preserved. The 75-foot vessel is thought to be ancient Greek. It still has its mast, rudders, and rowing benches. Speaking to The Guardian, Professor John Adams, the principal investigator with MAP, explained, "A ship surviving intact from the classical world, lying in over 2 kilometers of water, is something I would have never believed possible, and that it will change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world." The ship is thought to be a trading vessel. However, up to now, the design has only been seen on the size of ancient Greek pottery. The find is an archaeological first. The team have left the vessel untouched, apart from a small sample that was used to carbon date it by the University of Southampton. Number 5. $150 million of lost silver. At the bottom of the Atlantic for more than a century, a 150-year-old steamship had been found in 2003. The ship is the Republic, which sailed from New York in 1865, just after the Civil War, carrying 59 passengers and crew and mixed cargo meant to help New Orleans recover from the war. About 100 miles off Georgia, battling a hurricane, it sank in waters a third of a mile deep. Its cargo of lost coins, experts say, may now be up to worth $150 million. That would make it one of history's richest treasure wrecks. "It's a dream come true," said Dr. Donald H. Kagan, an expert on 19th century coins who is advising the company that discovered the wreck. there are piles of coins. The company Odyssey Marine Exploration of Tampa, Florida, who announced the find, said it hoped to retrieve all the coins. The company has retrieved more than 1,600 gold and silver coins, and none are dated later than 1865, tending to confirm the wreck's identity, said George Stem, the company's director of operations. For some reason, even the silver coins are in great condition. Part of it is surely the physical environment down there, he said. The icy deep explorers are still finding can often preserve objects, even precious metals like silver, that normally corrode easily. It's like finding a real treasure, and I would definitely like to receive some of those special coins. Number 4. Giant squid. The Kraken is a legendary sea monster of enormous size that is said to appear off the coast of Norway. Now, this is a mythical creature, but there is some truth to it. A giant squid was found on shore in Denmark in 1853. The giant squid is as elusive as the legend it inspired. It lives so deep underwater that we have limited information about it. However, we know it has the largest eyes of all living creatures, grows up to 18 meters, and is frequently hunted by sperm whales for food. The weaker giant squid generally flees when confronted by a whale, however, it sometimes fights back when cornered, and it's not unusual to find sperm whales with scars left from their battles with giant squids. It wasn't until the turn of the century in 2001 that humans saw the giant squid for the first time, and only a few years after that when it was finally photographed, making it one of the most elusive on the planet. The giant squid has long been known to exist, but capturing it on film has taken scientists extensive time and voyages to the deepest parts of the ocean where life is difficult to sustain. Number 3. Elongated skulls. Saquayum is a cenote located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It is a place that locals feared, and in 2012 a team of divers discovered the reason behind its fearsome reputation. An underwater survey discovered 2 chambers of the cenote littered with human bones, including deformed skulls. Archaeologists spent 2 weeks exploring the 2 chambers. The skulls belong to different sexes and ages, so they aren't thought to be sacrifices, which begs the question, why are they buried deep underwater? Archaeologist Bradley Russell, who made the discovery, believes the dead may have been buried as some form of ritual, or that they could be the victims of a plague that swept through the area. You wouldn't want them near the rest of the population, and you wouldn't want to drink the water either, Russell explained. Regardless, that's creepy. And why are the skulls elongated? Are they another species of human? I have so many questions. Number 2. Baltic Sea Anomaly. In 2011, a sonar image was taken by Peter Lindberg, Dennis Erberg, and their Swedish Ocean X diving team while searching for treasures on the ocean floor in the Baltic Sea. What the picture showed was a seemingly non-natural 200-foot circular object with passageways and stairs. The discovery looked like something out of a Star Wars film, and many people believed it was a spaceship that sank to the bottom of the ocean. Samples taken from the area in 2012 were given to Swedish scientists who said that there was nothing extraterrestrial about the area, but I'm not too sure about that. What Ocean X and the crew had found was weird, and many still think there is a UFO lying at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and there's another expedition to the area planned soon. And coming in at number 1 is giant underwater pyramids. Off the coast of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean is an anomaly that experts have been unable to fully understand or explain. Picked up by oceanic GPS technology, measurements of a structure were found, leading researchers to believe that 2 giant pyramids of ancient times sit underwater thousands of feet below the surface. The GPS data received back has the structures with a base of 8,000 square feet and about 150 feet tall, making these pyramids pretty giant in size. But there's very little explanation into their existence, leaving it entirely up to speculation. Why would they be there? Is it another hidden city? Who knows? The pyramid has been underwater for about 20,000 years. Considering this is around the time of the last ice age where glaciation was melting from its peak 2,000 years prior, whatever civilization, human or not, that was around before the ice age could be responsible for building the pyramid. While the Portuguese Navy still hasn't determined the origins, many might question why this hasn't been first reported sooner than late 2012. To further support the idea that this pyramid could have been built by different civilizations, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have recently discovered evidence on Pico Island that suggests their belief that humans existed in the Azores region before the arrival of the Portuguese thousands of years ago. Spooky.